Welcome to episode 42. Check out what we have in store for you this week.
And I'm speaking to myself just as much. I've done trainings that are part of professional development stuff where it's basically like, here, you can do this. And then they leave.
And that's it. It's done. Right. You call a meeting. Everybody gets together in the same room with their paper calendars. And then...
and they all figure it out. It'll be great.
Oh, yeah. Dang. Huh. Wow. That's cool. That's amazing. Wow. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the High Tech Podcast. It is Will and Josh here for episode, what are we on? 42? The Answer to Life.
42.
And
the Answer to Life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it only took us 42 episodes.
That's
good.
We're finally there. We got it.
Yeah, we're finally there. Yeah.
We're back for another week, folks. We are excited to be here and to bring you some more educational technology content, hopefully. We're in season 2.
That's what our podcast is kind of about.
Yeah, well, you know, I've told people before a couple times, like, oh yeah, what's your podcast called? High Tech, and their first response is usually not educational technology. But anyways, I digress. We hope, as always, that you will follow us on Twitter at High Tech Podcast. Make sure to like us, like our content, follow us along. We appreciate that. You can always connect with us on email at inbox@hightechpod.us.
Yep, and if you listen to our last episode, episode 41, we started a thing where I asked you to send us a picture of an animal so we know what episode you're from. And so, you know what, we're going to keep it going. So this week, if you listen to episode 42, emails at inbox@hightechpod.us with a picture of a platypus.
A platypus, folks. You heard
platypus.
You heard it here first.
Yes, so if we get a platypus, we'll know you're an episode 42 listener.
We
you
love
know
that.
So, and if you send us an image from last episode, it's okay. You can send us another one. Keep the game rolling.
And maybe, you know, just say like, hey, I'm blah 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 teacher from blah 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 district and I'd love to talk about something.
Yeah.
Or I teach at blah 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 university and I'd love to come on the podcast. We'd love to have you. Send us your platypus and your invitation.
Really was a person named blah 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 from like blah blah university. We were like,
it's pronounced
like, wow, they got
blah
really...
blah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you can hit us up there. And where else, Will? We have some other stuff online, right?
We always have a website. We want you to check out the website. As always, find resources. Every single episode has a little bit of how-to, some ideas about what to do with the tools we recommend and things like that. Always great to share with folks if you're interested in sharing, you know, like, hey, we talked about Parlay, we talked about VoiceThread. Send them that link to the page. Not only do they get to see the episode, but they get a little bit of where to start, how to get a free account, what to do to get started in the first times. And last but not least, most importantly, anchor.fm/hightechpod. That's where you can get access to the podcast on all of your favorites, Apple, Google, Spotify, etc. Great link to share with your friends if you want to give them the podcast. Now, this week, we're digging into, for me, a fun conversation.
What are we digging into, Will? What's the topic?
Specifically, episode 43's title and idea is, how do we test for learning? Not episode 44's, not episode 42's, or 41's, 42's episode. That's what we're doing this week. And I think I got it wrong again.
Yeah, you got it wrong. That's not our topic.
I quit.
You did it again.
I
That's
quit.
Great.
I got to stop scrolling so far down.
Yeah, you got to stop scrolling so far down on our page. So, yeah, for those who are missing it, this is week 2. This has happened again. Will has gotten the wrong topic for the episode and has looked at our topic for next week. So this week is not that. It's what should teacher PD, which we're not talking about public display of affection or anything of that nature, but what should teacher professional development look like? Is our topic this week. How you doing over there, man? You live? You good?
Oh my gosh.
I thought you were doing it as a joke. I didn't realize it was actually... For those of you who don't know, Will and I have show notes, and on our show notes, if you scroll down far enough, it tells us what the next episode is, because Will and I forget. And so when we exit our episode, we want to make sure you know what's coming up next week. In Will's defense, it's easy to scroll down too far and assume that is the list for this episode.
He's being generous, folks, but it's literally under a banner that says, "What's next episode?" I mean, like, This is the high tech podcast. We make things up. We make up the rules. This is where the points don't matter. It's perfect here. So yeah, our real topic, what should teacher PD look like? What do you think, Josh?
What do I think? Well, I think first of all, it should exist. That would be cool.
Great start.
So I feel like we shouldn't have to say that, but it's a reality that we are in many circumstances where professional development plans for teachers don't exist. And so I think it should exist. What it should actually look like, I've gone back and forth on this. I think like obviously it's going to depend on your situation. But I do think at its core, professional development for faculty, for teachers, instructors should be built in to your system for supporting your faculty. Like I think often it's kind of treated as like a side thing. Like if you want to participate in this stuff, you can. While it sounds brutal, I think it needs to be a required part of the faculty and instructors' lives. And I know it's easy for me to say that because I'm only newly a faculty member teaching. So like, I get that. Most of my time,
Josh, in 5 years. Why did I ever say that?
Why did I say that? But I think it's important because like we, especially in higher ed, which is what Will and I's focus tends to be, is that we get a lot of people who understandably are experts in their field, but they're not experts in teaching or education. And so there's so many techniques and things out there that we don't know about. Like I speak as myself. I did not come from a background of education. I learned a lot as I came into my field. And so there's so much stuff that we don't know that would be helpful to learn and be able to bounce off of ideas with each other. And that's the other thing. I think if I'm thinking about my ideal professional development, it's something that it's clearly a structure that faculty can fit into and get credit for doing. Like the required thing is not just so people do it. So it's actually they get credit for being a part of it, for doing it.
Right.
And then also I think it should be a collaborative thing. It's not just here's a whole bunch of videos on this topic or articles to read. It's collaborative where they get to work with each other on this stuff because so many educators learn from each other. Like, hey, I've been doing this in my class. That's really cool. And they get to pick up a new technique or they get to share those other ideas with each other. And so that's kind of like, if I'm doing kind of like ideas, not in any ranked order, I think those are some of those, which is this kind of required, but for credit development as a part of their hours that they're expected to do a week, not just extra stuff to tack on, but is actually a part of their
it's expected of them
life. Yeah. It's expected. Yeah. And they're given the time to do it. That's important. I think given the time to do it, and then it's collaborative. The other thing I think is just like options.
Oh, sure.
offer options.
A nice little menu.
Yeah. Like, I'm not normally like the whole like menu person like thing, but I think when it comes to professional development, different faculty members need different things. And so I think providing those different avenues or even tracks is kind of how I view it. It's easy for me to say that because my job is not to just plan out professional development. We have a friend who's like, that's his main area. And I'm saying this like it sounds so easy coming up with all of these things. It's not. So like I don't want to just like play it off that that's super easy, but those are some things that I'd be looking for. I don't know what is you've done a lot more in this area even than I have.
I've delivered
so like
PD.
I'm curious your thought.
Yeah, I've delivered PD. I've created video PD. I've I've taken it. I've gone to conferences with it. One of the things that I think that's really important to what you said, I want to tack that for first before I give some new thoughts, is like when you're saying for credit, yes, and I think what I'd add to that for credit point is like with a demonstration, with a deliverable, with a demonstrative. Like I think that PD should be resumeable. I'm making a nice new word there, right? Like if you've done good PD, you should have something that you can show on your resume for it. Like it stuns me. Like we get these roundtables, we get book clubs, we get whatever, and that's great. There's a lot of time to think and practice and process in those spaces. But when I do PD, right, when I do something that makes me better at my job, I learn a new software. I put that on my resume. I learn a coding language, right? I put that on my resume. I make a great new tutorial that fixes all the ailments of all the things that are in art. I put that on my resume, right? Like that's very tangible and makes sense. And I think that there's a lot of things. I think a lot of PD I've even delivered, probably folks we might have made more effort to make sure that the end product looked good and had like a website for it and stuff like that. But I can think of PDs I've delivered that I wish the faculty would have put it on their resume. You know, like it could have been good for you to learn, you know, about, you know, just any sort of pedagogy, like, one of my favorite ones, the term is slipping my head, but like if we go through and we practice a think, pair, share, for instance, and you come up with the best way to do a think, pair, share, or how it really works in counseling, or, you know, whatever, I want you to put that document on your resume as a demonstration of what you're capable of doing. That's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
And like, it should be that PD makes you better at your job. So you should want to show that off.
Yeah. Well, and to piggyback off that for a second, before you go too far into other ideas, the point of that, like, I think a good principle to take away from that is that if you're really being caring leadership and administration when it comes to trying to put together a professional development, you're thinking of it in this method in my mind, which is that you are making your faculty member look more appealing to other people as a faculty member than when they didn't go through your professional development. Yeah. Like, in that sounds weird to say it that way, but at the end of the day, it shows that you care. Like, you want your faculty members to be better. Like, the best leaders I've had in my teams have been the ones who have let me do credentialing and do things that make me more like if I was to go looking for another job, which I'm not, and they don't want me to do. If I was, though, it would make me look more appealing as an applicant and as somebody who has experience. So, like, setting it up in a way that they should be able to display their experience. And that looks different in different places. Like, I think in some areas it's like actually having a completion system that they can get credit
right.
and certification certificates stuff for what they've done as proof that they've been a part of it. But also, like you were talking about, sometimes there's professional development where like the goal is they're creating something or coming up with something that becomes something they can put on that they've said they've done, like working through plan to implement a certain idea or educational practice within their field. Like, what does that look like to do that?
Yeah.
It's a portfolio building thing.
And you know what? I can think of somebody.
Small, but I think it's a big deal.
I can think of somebody, you know him, social work, who's really good at this, right? So I know that when he started the program, it went a certain way, and he took a bunch of these PD courses on the specific style of doing instruction. It was a much more collaborative focus, and there's a certain way that you had to like make sure your outcomes were graded. Like he went through this whole thing though. He got certified in it, and he made the whole program operate on that. And he worked with all of his teachers, and he trained them all on how to teach this way. And like, that's, to me, that makes him hireable. Anyone should want to hire him to come into their program, bring that skill and experience. And you know what happened with your place, with this context? He didn't leave, thankfully. He went and did it to the master's program, right? Like there's that opportunity where if you invest in your people and you give good PD that actually gets them something that's valuable, not only for their classroom, but for their profession, then you invest in them and you keep them doing it more and more and in different ways. That is good. So now this institution does have a recognized premier undergraduate social work program and is coming into a premier master's program that, you know, didn't exist before. Neither of those things exist before this person showed up and made that effort to get the PD and then turn things around. That's a dramatic success story, but that can be as simple as an instructor who learns that engagement is not just taking one person's hand that's raised every 15 minutes, but engagement is actively talking to every student and getting them talking to each other. That is a demonstrable professional development step. And we could make badges, we could make certificates, we could make whatever that people could use to show that they've done that and get credit for it.
Well, and to go back, this is spawning an idea for me. It's the fact that, like, yeah, okay, we can do those certifications and stuff like that, and we should, I think, in certain circumstances as well. But I think a really good PD is designed with an intention that there's some practical way that they can take this and put it into what they're doing. And that shouldn't just be kind of like an unspoken expectation. And I'm speaking to myself just as much. I've done trainings that are part of professional development stuff where it's basically like, here, you can do this. And then they leave.
And that's it.
And
it's done. Right.
Like that's it. Like it was a day. It was an afternoon. You know, like what I've been coming around to the idea of like what we need is better. First of all, intention, and I think some programming to our professional development, not just a bunch of one-offs, but actual kind of thought behind how we do all of it. And then, but also that we should be coming just like we do any other learning situation, have goals and outcomes for those developments and push them towards a mini project or in a way to apply that so that they can demonstrate they've actually learned and can use it and can then benefit from it immediately from what they've done. And at the end of the day, if you start to do that, you're also, I think, boosting motivation to be involved, at least after they've come the first couple times, and hopefully find it beneficial.
But to your earlier point, to your earlier point, those I think the PD, there's two things that need to happen. The menu options need to be varied enough that will attract the social work, the counselor, the engineer, the math guy, the whatever, right? It needs to be varied enough to do that. But then we also need PD that's transferable. Like we need PD that people can show up regardless of who they are. So we need stuff that helps them, like, let's do PD on how to do math equations in Zoom land, right? That's a good PD for engineers, for math, for science. But then we need PD on engagement and PD on discussions and PD on how to write a syllabus. These are transferable things that anybody can attend. And that's where, you know, Josh and I have been really trying to work with the questions this season to be a little more like edgy, if you will. But this question wasn't, should we give PD, right? Josh and I believe professional development is critical. I believe it personally. We deliver it like it's already there. Everybody's doing it at some level, right? Our point with this episode is, what should it be? Because very often you get two people that show up, or you get the same three people that show up every time.
What are you talking about?
You know, you get everybody who signs up for the book club for the free book but never participates. There's so many things that go wrong. 100%. And we want to craft a vision for what could go right.
Yeah, and like the amount of times, like Will and I have been in these situations, amount of times I do trainings on learning management system stuff and like technology and stuff like that, and it's literally the same three people every time. They already know how to use Canvas. They already know half the techniques we're talking about. Like but they care a lot about that, and that's great. And I understand why other faculty members don't come a lot of times. One, because it's not required, and two, they're busy. I get it, they're working on stuff, but I also think we should be viewing a requirement to progress in not just our field, but in how we teach our field. Because at the end of the day, I get it, you're an expert in your field, you're also an instructor, and that's not meant to be a criticism of their perspective. It's just saying, like, we need to understand as institutions that, like, we're not just growing smart experts. We're trying to grow teachers, and we're trying to help them be better at what they're doing. And so I think that needs to be in there. The thought I was just working out here is like, okay, so we're talking about this stuff. It kind of sounds like there's some themes coming through. Like, so needs to be some kind of structure. I think a path, I would argue kind of like a pathway, goals to what that professional development is going to look like. And I think very much this can be like, especially for those of us in higher ed, like semester to semester is okay. Like coming up with ideas, kind of what are we trying to see our faculty grow in this semester, and kind of set those goals. I do think it needs to be targeted a little bit sometimes. Like, so for instance, professional development for online faculty is going to look a lot different than face-to-face faculty. And like, those are areas where that breakup can happen. And so some people may be going, okay, that's great, Will and Josh. These all sound like really great dream ideas for those two podcasters who don't really have to do this tomorrow, which I would argue some of us do. We still do professional development, although our team's been doing less of it because we're busy doing other things right now. But how do you get started with that? Well, I think one of the things, like basic starting point, is like define who your faculty members are first. So like whatever group you're with, this is coming back to how to design learning. There's a principle that we use in like design stuff that I've really attached myself to, which is this idea of creating like a persona, but basically like defining a groups. Okay, what are kind of your major groups of faculty members? And then leveraging off of that to think, okay, what do I want my faculty members to be? What do we want our instructors to be? What does that ideal instructor look like? And then I've seen people who take a couple different techniques. Some people are like, you're not there. How dare you? Wrong one. Okay. It's to say, okay, they're not there. How can I help bridge the gap for them and not just expect them to get there on their own? Because I've seen administrations, and I'm going to be very critical, who have not taken that technique and have said basically like, this is our future faculty. You need to be this, but then provide zero avenue to get them there.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's like you need to create that bridge for what it's going to need to look like. And so I think those are your starting points. Like, who is it that your faculty are? Who do you want them to be? What do they need? What do they need to be able to do to be successful in their job and what they do? And then, okay, how do we bridge that gap? What are some like practical deliverables that we could try to get them to and offer to them and help them show proof that they've done it? And it's weird. It kind of sounds like designing a course.
Weird.
Which at the end of the day, I think really what professional development is a course for teachers. Like it's
micro learning.
It's not that crazy.
It's meant to be like small bite size, whether it's a 2-hour workshop or a 1-week thing or a 1-month thing. It's meant to be, an opportunity to upskill in a short amount of time. Otherwise, these folks like, so one thing that I haven't, that's been in the back of my mind as we process this conversation is like thinking in K-12, right? At least in Pennsylvania, I don't know if this is federal, but I know a lot of the K-12 teachers I've talked to all operate under some system where they have to do continuing education units, CEUs, and most of them just go and get another master's degree and get another master's degree and get another master's degree and get a certificate. Like if you teach from, your 20s to the time you're 50, 60, you might end with like a bachelor's and 3 master's degrees because you just keep being required to take credit courses. And so why not just go get a degree? Like, makes sense, right? And they get reimbursements and stuff like that. That's great for them. But is that really challenging that person to address issues in their classroom? Is that really challenging that person to be a better teacher for what they're doing? Like if they go and get a principal's master's certificate, they're trying to become a principal. They're not trying to stay their teacher self anymore. So if you've got these engineers, if you've got an art historian, if you've got a literature instructor, the PD we can provide them is sometimes, we've got reimbursement programs like go get a PhD in your area or whatever, but like I want to give them opportunities that help them grow their ability as an art historian.
Yeah.
I want you to be a better engineer. I want like the stuff that you're able to teach and how you teach it should actually make you better at what you do. Because I do believe the best way to learn is to teach. That's my first philosophy of learning from when I was 16 years old. I got to teach people some martial arts stuff, and I'll tell you how much better I got to learning what I was teaching them because I wanted to make sure it was right. I wanted to make sure it landed with them. I wanted to make sure it was interesting. I wanted to make sure it was hard. These are things that I cared about doing. And it took me teaching that to learn what it was to do that for myself even. So I think that that's a big opportunity for our instructors. Like I like, of course, I've even benefited from reimbursement programs where you get to go get a degree and you get paid back or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not a problem, but I don't think that sending people out to get a degree is the answer to the issues that are happening in their classroom. And that's where our PD, maybe the only other thing that I'd add to like what we've said so far about like what we want PD to be is that PD providers, wow, we should just say professional development. I keep seeing the letters and I get messed up. Professional development providers, right? Whether that's Centers for Teaching Excellence, Centers for Teaching and Learning, whether that's just your provost, whether that's just your program coordinator, whoever it is, whoever's providing the professional development needs to go spend time with those instructors in their classrooms. And then again, this is where PD gets hard. Like that's time, it's a time sink, but people need to see what's happening to know what needs to be helped, right? You could, by chance, have a program or an institution of all very engaging instructors. So don't deliver a 6-month series on engagement. Like, now we need to see what is the thing that they're not doing well at, or what could they try differently. Like maybe these engaging professors have really bad tests. So we need to do PD on tests. Don't offer them the stuff they're good at. Offer them stuff that can help them be better.
And that's a good starting point. I think if you're like looking to do this in different ways, like it depends on where you're at. Like if you already know what your teachers need, okay, figure out what label out those goals. I'm a big fan of like write them out. Darn it. Okay, I get it. We talk about it, but like writing them out, I've become more and more convinced of just like writing out clearly what our goals are helps us define them. But like write those out. If you're not there, you have no idea. Don't do, and I'm speaking to myself just as much because we've done this from time to time. Don't just like start random guessing what they need.
Yeah.
And I've done that and it doesn't work. It's like get into the classroom with them. If you don't have a leader in that place doing like a center for teaching and learning or something like that who can kind of help step into that space and do that and kind of guide the rest of the ship, so to speak, towards what needs to be given, get people into the classrooms and see what teachers really need, talk with them, figure out what they need. And I'm speaking to this just myself just as much because I have not done that in certain areas that we probably should have. And so I think that's a good starting point to kind of figure that out.
That is
when we're
one of the
looking at professional
things.
development.
That is one of the things I love doing as an instructional technologist. Like I didn't do it a lot, but 2 or 3 times I can think of. Like I went and sat in a classroom, and you know, at some level it feels like a time sink. But man, do you really see? Because we all, I mean, that's the whole point of therapists and counselors, right? I know what thoughts are in my head. I know what feelings are in my heart. But I'm not always able to make sense of them. So I go and I talk to somebody else, a counselor, a therapist, to help me process what's inside. Somebody who's teaching is focused on teaching in the moment. They've got content. They're worried about if people are paying attention. There might have been somebody who dropped their laptop, made a noise. It's really hard to be teaching and thinking about how to teach better. So, you know, an instructional technologist is an opportunity, and Centers for Teaching Excellence, etc. These are the people who have the opportunity to come in and help you as a faculty member reflect on what could be better, what might be a problem point. And you know what? You love it. Invite them into your classroom. They meet with you afterwards and they say, man, that was the best class I've seen ever. There you go. Then you're fine. You got a little, pat on the back, attaboy. Nothing too much to worry about. You can find things to work on yourself. But, don't be scared, I guess, even to ask somebody like a Josh, like a me, like anybody in a center that could help you, to come into the classroom and take a peek. That's really, I don't know, it's what we're here to do. We love this stuff. So, in another sense, teacher PD, teacher professional development, can be programmatic. It can be these things that we do and menus that are effective, but PD can also be meeting one-on-one with somebody to help improve your practice. Whatever is going to make you better at your job. And that's why PD isn't just about education. Everybody does PD. Professional development helps you take the next step in what you're good at doing. So find some ways that it works well for you. Or if you're not a faculty member, if you're listening and you're somebody who does deliver this, make sure it's effective. Make sure it's helpful. Follow some of these ideas that we've been discussing so far.
Oh, yeah, and absolutely. Setting in feedback loops and ways to figure out if it's been effective is other important element that I would want involved that I've not always done well myself either. Like I think I build this wish list off of stuff that like if I still had time to do professional development,
if I did it the way I wanted to.
If I had time to go back to past Josh 3 years ago who had time to do professional development for people, I would do it this way. But I think that's the other thing I would throw in. Now, you may be asking, calendars are crazy, things are hard to schedule. How do I schedule these things, Josh? How do I pull together everybody's calendars at the same time? Wow. How do I make sure that people have availability? How do I provide these options? How do I make it known?
Yeah, Josh, how do you do that?
How do you do that? Well, you obviously pull out your paper calendars and you write down. Somebody out there, like I have a coworker who loves his paper calendar and he's going to be annoyed at me for that joke.
You call a meeting, everybody gets together in the same room with their paper calendars, and then
they all figure it out. It'll be great. No, there's an app for that. Surprise. That's called Calendly. And we wanted to talk about it today. And ironically, I think we just kind of picked it because we were looking for an app, and Calendly's been on our list for a little while. I know Calendly well. I use Calendly a ton. Our team uses Calendly at my work. We adopted it last year, and have not regretted it for a second. I love the tool.
I've used
but it actually fits
Calendly to like submit things, and we use it for the podcast for some things.
We use it for the podcast too, to schedule interview people. But I do ironically think it fits well with professional development if you're somebody planning out professional development, because a lot of times I've had to come up with ways to make professional development available to people and have them sign up. And sometimes I have limited slots for professional development. Like I want to keep groups small. I don't want to have them like giant groups of 80 people and try to do small group stuff. Like there's times I've had to kind of be customized with how people sign up. And Calendly's great for that. So basically, Calendly's solution is pretty simple. It is a scheduling app, kind of a sign-up app that you can use. That basically it connects to whatever calendar you use. So if you don't have one that you use, you can set one up in Calendly. But if you're like me and Will, who have like Google calendars, or we have like I have at work, I have an Outlook calendar tied to my email. What Calendly does is connects to that app, to your calendar, finds your availability, and then basically you can create events and things inside Calendly, or meeting requests inside Calendly where people can sign up to meet with you. And this can be everything from one-on-one meetings. Like I use this at a support level. If an instructor wants to sit down and talk like Will's talking about, maybe about an app or about something they want to do, I can send this link to them without having to try to send 18 emails back and forth about when we're available. And they can sign up for whatever time works for them.
Oh, yeah.
Based on my availability. And then Calendly auto creates an event in my calendar for me and notifies me. And the really cool thing about what Calendly can do is it also integrates with like Zoom and other apps like that. So I have it set up to auto create Zoom meetings and stuff because I have faculty at other sites.
Dang.
In other areas. So Calendly can create Zoom links and things like that for me automatically. And those features come with the free version of Calendly. So you don't know this because we don't use it in the High Tech Podcast. Huh. But that stuff all happens with the free version.
Wow.
Which is really cool. So it's great. I think places it works really well for are like stuff like signing up for trainings. Where we see it getting used a lot in the free version is for advisors. If you're an advisor who meets with students, Calendly is fantastic for that.
I've had a lot of faculty ask for stuff like that over time. Like I never suggested Calendly. I've never been a big user until like this time in my life. But like when I worked at your institution, yes. When I worked at my last institution, yes. People are always asking for like, how's a better way? Like I just put up like a Google Doc with like a couple of columns and ask people to sign up for times. It kind of works, but
it kind of works.
If you can actually get it on the calendar,
it literally
works.
Does all of that. And the great thing about Calendly is just because it's live catching your calendar. So like,
right, it can check against
when
what's
a
already
student
there.
Schedules something else, they can put it in. And the other thing I like about Calendly is you can add form questions into the system. So like what we do is we ask for people's email and name, but then we also ask that they like describe what they want to meet about. Like, and you can even ask for stuff like, you can put number fields in. You can put a lot of different types of fields in there, like links and stuff. So if you want them to provide something ahead of time, link to something to meet with, you can do that. The other thing I really love about Calendly is that there's an add guest button. So like if you want two students to come together and figure out how to meet, they can both take a look at your calendar and then both sign up at the exact same time and meet at that time.
That's cool.
So there's a lot of different options with Calendly that you can do, and then you can embed that event or whatever in other sites or send that link to people and do that. It's really, really cool. They even added a feature recently in the last year where like you can embed availability for a certain amount of days into an email. And so like they can actually select the availability directly from the email. It's really, really cool.
That's great.
That's awesome. The other thing I like about Calendly is you can create different events with different time constraints. And so for those of you in support, like Will and I from time to time, that instructor may want to meet for 4 hours, but I'm only meeting for 30 minutes about this conversation. And Calendly allows me to send a link that will restrict them down to that 30-minute time slot. That they can select, which is really cool.
Wow.
So I think it has a lot of different uses, but I think very much in like advising, student support, like basically writing center type of stuff, like stuff we've talked about, or advising,
right.
Tutor stuff, Calendly is great for it. But then also professional development. If you're looking to create different events and things, people can sign up for in that area. Calendly is great for that. We recently used it to do like a Q&A small group session where we only were allowing 6 people per session. And I could I could put a minimum requirement that only 6 people were allowed to sign up for the session. And when it did, it would lock down that session and people had to go choose other sessions to get involved.
That's cool.
So it was really easy.
This thing sounds like a superstar. Like if you want to run your calendar without like all of the back, I'm dealing with something right now. I started a request for sessions from a vendor last Tuesday. What's today? Tuesday. And I still don't have the dates picked between the vendor and my internal team. Like we're still going back and forth.
Yeah.
I can't do that. Can we do this week? Can we do my team? Can we do this time for, like that stuff is just a waste of time.
And here's a practical example out of that. So Calendly, I'm describing a lot of stuff you can do in the free version. Calendly is a freemium product, but they have paid features. And so like our team, we use a team setup. So like I have an administrative access. I have our whole team into it. We have some standards about how our Calendlys are set up, stuff like that. But like, so for instance, Will, what you're describing with the team setup, what we have, I'm able to set up an event that's called a group event. So every 4 people from my team are required for this event. So it tracks our availability across all 4 calendars and provides the time slots to the person we're trying to get signed up, what is actually available between these 4 people together.
That's amazing.
Which is really cool. The other thing I really like is we have a support team. And so I'm more and more becoming less the primary support contact. And so another team member of mine is more and more becoming the primary support contact for our LMS. And so what ends up happening is I can set up in what they call a round robin, I think is what it's called, where basically they look at availability. It tracks both his availability and my availability, selects it. And if they select a time slot that both me and him are available for, because he's becoming the more primary support person, it will send it to his calendar if he's available and default away from me, if possible. It'll even track the amount of times people have been signed up for events. Like if we wanted to use it that way, I could basically tell it make sure everybody's evenly distributed across these events. So there's a lot of power to what Calendly can do. If you had a team of 6 or something,
it would just distribute them across the 6 evenly.
And let's say we were going to do this, but we didn't go this direction. Well, actually, I think we did. We have on our site a sign up area where people can click on, and we have one that's called design help or something. Like our instructional designers are attached to it. And I have it set up to evenly distribute that across our instructional designers. So if they go to sign up and instructional designer 1 has already gotten 2 events, but instructional designer 2 hasn't, but instructional designer 2 is available, Calendly will send that event over to instructional designer 2 because they haven't gotten any events yet. And so it'll evenly distribute all of that out. So it's cool. That's with paid features, though.
Yeah, okay, cool. Hey, this is one of those freemium things that sounds worth the money. I just think about all the time I spend back and forth with people, or it just drives me nuts, especially when you're dealing with, like in my case, a vendor and internal, but even across teams. I need somebody from mentoring services to get together with somebody from registrar to get together with somebody from this and me. How the heck are you going to get those 4 teams who all operate very differently to agree on a method to meet? You know what I mean? So Calendly would bridge that. You're just like, oh, hey, we're meeting. Here's the Calendly link, and it's done.
Yeah. And we've even gotten to the point where we put the link in our signature. So in my signature and my emails, it says do you want to meet with Josh? And they can click on it and it'll take them to my personal Calendly page. And because we have a paid version, I have a bunch of meeting options on that page. Do you want a 30-minute meeting in person? Do you want a 30-minute meeting over Zoom? Do you want an hour-long meeting? Stuff like that. They can select from it. So it's really cool. If you're looking for it to try it out, I would encourage you to try out the basic free version first. It allows you to do one event, but with a whole bunch of customized options to it of what I was describing. And then from there, they have an essentials version that's $8. The main one that a lot of people get are the professional $12 one. Our team specifically has a Teams setup, which is a little bit more expensive, but we do it because we use it all the time. And we really like it. I have not regretted buying this tool once.
Wow.
In my entire life. So I would encourage you to check it out. Again, you can just go to calendly.com. Super easy tool to access and use. So
Sweet, dude. I love that one.
Yeah. With that said, we are coming to the end of this episode. I know it's depressing and sad, but just a couple things. Don't worry. We'll be back next week with another episode where we'll talk about a topic that you may have heard earlier and thought that was cool.
What topic is that, Josh?
What topic is that? We are going to be talking about how do we test for learning. So I'm excited about this topic. We're going to talk a little bit about how do we use tests and quizzes, and how can we use them in a way that actually encourages learning and not just like rogue memory or compliance. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to look at a tool called Socrative, which is pretty sweet, and excited to talk about that. But that's next week on episode 43. Again, just a reminder, we're on Twitter at High Tech Podcast. Check us out, follow us, subscribe. We post things there occasionally, and it's fun.
Sometimes,
if you like Ted Lasso, there's lots of memes from Ted Lasso a lot of times on on Twitter. Thank you, Will. And you can email us at inbox@hightechpod.us. Remember, if you're listening to this episode, email us a picture of a platypus. We would greatly appreciate it because animals are cool. But yeah, check us out online. hightechpod.us is also our website, and anchor.fm/hightechpod. Thank you again, guys, for joining us for another week as we continue to learn what it looks like to harness technology in the classroom, whether online or in person. See ya.
See ya.